I don't take that serious, man. They're trying to kill me my whole life, bro. I ain't gonna see you. You gotta show me for real.
Lil Jeff's death continues to dominate conversation online, and the man accused of killing him has made it clear he doesn't to take Jeff's affiliates seriously. And that message alone added gasoline to an already volatile situation.
People are saying that he was trying to be the next King Von.
He wasn't just dismissive, he was defiant. And he made it clear he was indeed going to make anything easy for anyone coming after him. But once Lil Jeff's killer went online and publicly revealed the late rapper's alleged last words, the tension crossed a line. From that moment on, Jeff's people reportedly swore retaliation, and what followed only pushed the story into even darker territory.
Be like, you don't be getting death threats. That's why I would ask. If you ain't even get a chance to even ask that.
I don't take that serious, man. They're trying to kill me my whole life, bro. I ain't gonna see you. You gotta show me for real.
More drama followed, and then more death. As details kept coming out, people started noticing unsettling similarities between Lil Jeff and King Von. Not just in their reputations, but in how their stories unfolded and how fast things spiraled once violence entered the picture.
And the paperwork can say he was hit 19 times in the chest area.
He was shot 19
times. And that's how I think they grabbed Rob for the murder, because it's overkill. It ain't self-defense 19 times.
The deeper this situation goes, the more unhinged it begins to feel. And understanding it requires slowing down and looking closely at what actually happened. Lil Jeff's final moments, and the behavior of everyone involved, paint a picture that's far more complicated than the internet headlines suggest. One thing has become clear through all of this. Trap City Rob has built a reputation around fearlessness. If there's anything he's shown the world, it's that intimidation doesn't work on him. Anyone willing to empty an entire clip into someone as feared as Lil Jeff Ison?
They got his own, look, they got a group called Trap City Gang.
Right.
That's the group, just the group.
Right.
Gang, and his picture's on there, and then they got, look, it say 1,000, the members in there, it say 1,738 nephews.
I just feel like they bogus, man. Whoever started that, man, please stop doing stuff like that. Like, for real, it's like real life, though, you know? So, it's not no video game. It's not no movie, you know what I'm saying? It's reality.
Tease someone to take lightly. And now, with Lil Jeff's affiliates openly searching for someone to blame, someone to absorb their pain and anger, Trap City Rob decided to speak directly to them. His message was simple and cold. People have been trying to kill him his entire life, and none of them have succeeded. That wasn't just talk. On June 8th, 2024, cameras would capture a chain of events that backed up exactly what he was claiming.
They say his dad from down here, Big J or some shit like that.
Everybody
Big Jeff?
from around here. Anybody you got to...
Also, his daddy is from down here.
Yeah, fuck used to hang with them. They know what they did.
So, okay.
They know what they did.
So, okay, the Bloodhounds, y'all was cool.
Everybody that got a... That was my homie. He stole the chain, bro. We tried like he stole my homie chain.
Was that South J or some shit?
Nah, brother. One of the other guys. This one of Weather J, he come back like he got into a high speed with 12. Line saying he lost it. You know what I'm saying? That's how the broke day list. You know what I'm saying?
Footage from that night showed just how difficult it would be for his enemies to catch him slipping. Those moments, recorded in real time, would go on to change multiple lives forever. In the early hours of June 9th, news broke across Chicago. An unidentified male had been shot and killed on June 8th, 2024. Spot News soon confirmed what many already suspected. The victim was Chicago rapper Bloodhound Lil Jeff. It didn't take long before CCTV footage of the shooting surfaced online, spreading rapidly and drawing millions of eyes to the scene. The minute-by-minute sequence captured on surveillance was chaotic. Cameras from the 6,600 block of South Rhodes Avenue showed a group of individuals gathered near a house, surrounded by several parked vehicles. Among them were Lil Jeff's close associates. There was a black car holding multiple people, a person dressed entirely in black.
No, probably no beside two real with a in the middle, man. Y'all don't do that, man. Don't fuck up our legacy. So right here, y'all, two guys.
Another individual wearing red who would later be identified as Q50, and someone else in a white hoodie. At the same time, a man wearing yellow shorts was seen attempting to get into a nearby vehicle. That moment appears to have caught Lil Jeff's attention. the door of the black car suddenly opened and Lil Jeff stepped out. There was no hesitation. He immediately took off running after the man in yellow shorts. As he chased him, his body moved out of the camera's clear view, briefly blocked by a large pillar attached to the house. What stands out is what happened next. While Lil Jeff pursued his target, his own people did not follow him. Instead, they shifted their focus elsewhere and began firing at a gray vehicle nearby. Lil Jeff managed to shoot the man in yellow shorts once in the chest. But before he could continue or retreat, two other individuals suddenly emerged from an alley and opened fire on him. The impact was immediate and brutal. Lil Jeff's body was thrown backward, collapsing at the foot of the porch. As he lay on the ground, the shooter stood over him and continued firing. Reports indicate an entire magazine was emptied into his body from above, ensuring there was no chance of survival.
If I see Juke, if I see Gotti, if I see Migo, or if I see Youngster, I'ma get on this shit. Ain't got nothing to do with nobody else, bro. Nigga don't know that Juke put a hit out, bro. Don't know this shit.
Q50 and another shooter attempted to return fire, but by then it was already over. There was no saving him. Within seconds, the situation was decided. The rest of the crew fled the scene, jumping back into their vehicle and speeding away, leaving Lil Jeff behind, motionless and bleeding on the pavement. As the footage comes to an end, scanner traffic confirms that a victim who had been shot approximately 15 times was transported to the hospital by his associates. Additional CCTV footage shows Lil Jeff's people lifting his body from the porch, carrying their wounded friend away from the place where he had been gunned down. Despite their efforts, Lil Jeff was pronounced dead upon arrival.
He did an interview with DJU where he was talking about, the rumor that he had 10 bodies and stuff like that. And, people were saying that he was trying to be the next King.
By the time authorities reached the scene, the damage was already done. The street was littered with evidence. 58 shell casings scattered across the pavement. A silent record of how violent and chaotic the final moments had been. At the same time, the man in the yellow shorts was also transported to the hospital. He arrived with his own people, suffering from a gunshot wound to the chest. Unlike Lil Jeff, he survived. That man was Trap City Rob. He had come face to face with death and walked away. But survival did not mean freedom. Rob was taken into custody shortly after. According to Trench's News, law enforcement initially viewed the shooting as excessive. Firing on Lil Jeff while he was already down, reportedly up to 19 times, was not treated as self-defense. Instead, investigators described it as overkill, a distinction that carried serious legal consequences. Soon after, new information began circulating online.
Vaughn was he was a different individual, bro. He was something was wrong with him. That's not human, man. You're not regular, man. The devil, man. That was the devil, man. Real, man. That nigga was the devil.
Reports surfaced on Reddit claiming that Trap City Rob's charges had been reduced. What was first framed as a first-degree murder case was allegedly downgraded to a gun-related charge. Another Reddit post added more context, stating that Rob had initially been arrested for Lil Jeff's murder because a witness placed him at the scene during the shooting. However, after further investigation, Chicago Police Department reportedly could not prove that Rob was the actual shooter who killed Lil Jeff. Without enough evidence to support a homicide charge, prosecutors dropped the murder count and pursued a firearm charge instead. As the legal situation unfolded, a photo of Trap City Rob began circulating online. The image, leaked onto Reddit, showed him appearing healthy and calm, seemingly in good spirits. For his supporters, it was a reassuring sight. His following had grown rapidly since the shooting, and many had been anxiously waiting for any sign of how he was holding up. Rob's name had reached a point where he now had his own subreddit, known as Trady UNC Gang, with more than 2,500 members who refer to themselves as nephews. With that attention came problems. Despite the support, Trap City Rob publicly asked Reddit users to stop spreading false information for clicks. The speculation, rumors, and half-truths were moving faster than verified facts, and not all of it reflected reality. Still, some of the details shared online aligned closely with what actually happened.
When you looked at King Von getting killed, how did you feel? Considering the animosity between you guys up to that point.
Like my real first action thought, I was happy.
You were happy.
I was happy.
especially when it came to how the conflict began. According to one widely shared Reddit post, the beef between Trady and the Bloodhounds started over a stolen chain. That part was accurate. Rob himself explained that Lil Jeff and Trady were once cool. There was no immediate hostility at the beginning. That relationship changed after the chain incident. According to Rob's account, one of his affiliates allowed Lil Jeff to wear a chain. It wasn't a robbery at first, but Lil Jeff never returned it. Instead, he claimed he had gotten into an altercation with police and lost the jewelry during the incident. That explanation didn't sit right, and what seemed like a small issue quickly escalated. That single chain became the spark. It triggered a sequence of retaliation that spiraled far beyond control. Over time, it would contribute to a wave of violence that left dozens of teenagers in Chicago dead. Even after Lil Jeff was killed and laid to rest, the conflict didn't end. His affiliates continued sliding in his name, keeping the cycle alive. One of the first people to lose their life as the saga continued was Trap City Carter, marking another grim chapter in a story that refused to stop. Get back was inevitable.
So, man, when you listen to the lyrics, he make killing somebody sound appealing and fascinating.
After Lil Jeff's death, it was only a matter of time before his affiliates went looking for retaliation. It didn't matter to them that Jeff had gone out that night actively chasing trouble. In their eyes, the responsibility no longer mattered. What mattered was blood, and they were determined to collect it. The streets were already tense, and everyone watching closely understood that the next strike wasn't a question of if, but when. That moment came quickly. Their next target was Trady Carter. On October 20th, 2024, news outlets reported that a man had been killed in Chicago the night before, after shots rang out in the city's Oakland neighborhood. By the time it was over, a man was left bleeding on the pavement, his life slipping away second by second. The shooting happened around 8:41 p.m. on South Ellis Avenue, a block like many others in Chicago, already familiar with violence and loss. Witnesses told police that two men approached their target with guns already drawn. There was no argument, no warning, no hesitation. Shots were fired immediately. The victim never had a chance to defend himself or escape. Within moments, the shooters jumped into a white vehicle and vanished into the night, leaving chaos behind them. Paramedics responded quickly, rushing the victim to the University of Chicago Medical Center. But the wounds were catastrophic.
So they were standing out there, and this block was full of people. And the story that I'm hearing was a car pulled up and asked for Duck. Like, yo, Duck out here? And everybody looking like, who is you? They didn't recognize who was in the car. They instantly shot Kobe. And Brick tried to run and jump a gate and was shot in the back.
He had been shot multiple times in the chest and had lost a significant amount of blood. Despite emergency efforts, doctors were unable to save him. He was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. The medical examiner later identified the victim as Chevelle Carter. Online, Lil Jeff's affiliates didn't try to hide their reaction. Almost immediately, they flooded social media with posts that mirrored the same behavior seen after Jeff's own death. Cryptic messages began appearing, heavily implying that Carter's killing was direct retaliation. Get back for Lil Jeff! They wanted that message to be understood clearly. One of the most visible reactions came from Q51, one of Lil Jeff's closest affiliates. He took to Instagram and posted an image of 3 blunts, along with a caption that suggested he was finished sliding because he had avenged his homie. The post read like a declaration: Lil Scum and Lil G bowling feet kicked up. Now I can get rich. I love and miss y'all. He added a final line that made things even more chilling. P.S. It ain't over, and he meant it, because the retaliation didn't stop there. Instead, the situation spiraled further out of control. Just days later, another life would be lost as the conflict spread beyond the people directly involved. This time, the victim wasn't part of the street war at all. On November 2nd, what should have been a moment of mourning turned into another tragedy. Trap City Carter's funeral procession became the scene of yet another deadly shooting. News outlets reported that a woman was shot and killed while participating in the procession for her brother in the south suburban area of Dixmoor. She had come to grieve, to stand with family, to honor the life that had already been taken. Instead, she lost her own. At approximately 12:01 p.m., Dixmoor police were called to the intersection of 147th Street and Sealy Avenue. A white Jaguar SUV had crashed into a nearby house. At first glance, it appeared to be a traffic accident, but officers quickly realized the truth was far worse.
The shit will start happening, and y'all know this by now. I went black for like a week, and poof. Gotta go after that one. Poof.
Inside the vehicle was a 34-year-old woman slumped behind the wheel, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds.
Ow.
She had been driving as part of the funeral procession, traveling from St. Mark's Church in Harvey. When gunfire erupted, the same streets that were meant to carry her brother on his final journey became the place where her own life ended. Paramedics rushed her to UChicago Medicine and Gauls Memorial Hospital in Harvey, doing everything they could to keep her alive. But the injuries were too severe, and despite their efforts, she did not survive. She was pronounced dead shortly after arriving at the hospital. Authorities later identified her as Romesh Turner of Calumet Park. She was Trady Carter's sister. For Lil Jeff's affiliates, that detail didn't matter. By that point, there were no boundaries left, no lines they were unwilling to cross in the name of revenge. Shooting at a funeral. Killing an innocent family member of an already dead rival. The situation in Chicago had reached a new low, one that showed how detached the violence had become from any original dispute. What made it even more disturbing was the realization that this wasn't isolated. Similar acts were unfolding elsewhere in the country, carried out with the same disregard for life. In another city, another funeral, another family, the same pattern would repeat itself almost step for step. On January 13th, 2024, Memphis witnessed a strikingly similar tragedy. A well-known figure in the city, Big Juke, was shot and killed while attending a funeral. Big Juke was widely recognized for his involvement in managing his brother Yo Gotti's music label, Collective Music Group, is commonly known as CMG. That day, he was present at a funeral service held at Perrone's Restaurant and Event Center on the 6300 block of Winchester Road. Just hours before the ceremony began, Big Juke posted a photo online with a message that now reads like a warning. He wrote that people don't want to face you, they want to snake you. He urged others to stay alert, stay alive, and watch their back at all times. He ended the message with a phrase about putting snakes on the plate and eating great. At the time, it sounded like typical street talk. In hindsight, it felt chilling. Big Juke and other members of his family had gathered to pay their respects to his late uncle, Eric Bone. Bone was a legendary figure in Memphis, a known cocaine kingpin in the 1980s, and the head of the Bone family. He had passed away on December 31st, 2024, at the age of 63. His funeral brought together relatives, friends, and members of the community, all there to honor his life. But the mourning didn't last long. Once outside the venue in the parking lot, shots rang out. Panic followed. When the gunfire stopped, Big Juke was on the ground, bleeding heavily. He had been struck and was critically wounded. Authorities immediately launched a manhunt, calling on the public for any information that could help identify those responsible. By the next day, the investigation began to take shape. Witnesses came forward and provided key details. One witness reported seeing suspects flee the scene in a white SUV. The vehicle was described as a white Ford Explorer with black wheels and dark-tinted windows. Surveillance footage later confirmed images of a vehicle matching that description, giving investigators an important lead. But there was more. Several people who attended the funeral reported seeing two suspicious men inside the church itself. According to witnesses, these men were seated toward the back during the service, closely watching Big Juke. They reportedly left the church earlier than most of the mourners. That detail added a new layer to the case, suggesting the attack may have been planned well before anyone stepped into the parking lot. What made the situation even more alarming was the fact that Big Juke was on T alone in the vehicle when he was shot. His mother was seated in the back seat. Whoever carried out the attack wanted him gone and showed no concern for who else might be hurt in the process. Innocent lives were clearly not a consideration. That raised the question many were already asking. Who would want Yo Gotti's brother dead? As the internet began dissecting every detail, online investigators started connecting dots. Their conclusions pointed in a direction that shocked few people familiar with Memphis street politics. The trail led back to the death of young Dolph. Big Juke had openly dissed young Dolph, especially after Dolph was killed in 2021. He made his feelings public, taking to Instagram to criticize a street mural that featured his brother's rival. The painting included images of NLE Choppa, Moneybag Yo, and young Dolph. Big Juke did not hold back his contempt. Those posts never faded from memory in a city where grudges are rarely forgotten. What made the situation even more disturbing were the allegations surrounding Big Juke and the role he was rumored to have played behind the scenes. According to long circulating claims, Big Juke had placed a $40,000 bounty on young Dolph's head. The allegations went further, stating that he approached his right-hand man and instructed him to find people willing to carry out the hit. Those accusations have never faded from public conversation, especially given how closely they align with the violence that followed. And just like Yo Gotti's brother, Lil Jeff's enemies and even their families were no longer off limits. His affiliates were actively applying pressure, carrying out retaliation with no regard for collateral damage. They were committed to sliding for Jeff, driven by the belief that while he was alive, he had single-handedly made their rivals afraid of the Bloodhounds. His reputation had grown so large, so fast, that people began drawing comparisons that carried serious weight in Chicago. Lil Jeff was being called the new King Von, while he was still alive. Jeff moved with a level of recklessness that reminded many of Von's rise. And anyone familiar with King Von's name in the streets understands what that comparison implies. It takes a particular kind of reputation to be mentioned alongside him. Von was often described as rap's first serial killer, not because of exaggeration, but because of how consistently violence followed his name. He enjoyed sliding on his enemies so openly that some of them, including King Yella, openly questioned whether he was even human. Others, like FBG Young, reportedly celebrated when Von was killed in Atlanta, seeing it as the end of a long-running nightmare. What made Von especially dangerous wasn't just the violence itself, but the way he spoke about it. He made murder sound fascinating, turned it into a narrative, something dramatic and almost cinematic, which only amplified the fear surrounding him. Lil Jeff appeared to be following that same path. He released violent music centered around killing rivals, trolled dead enemies online, and became associated with the deaths of female gang members as well. What shocked many people even more was how closely his story began to mirror Von's. They were killed in strikingly similar circumstances, and even after death, both men became tied to murder cases that continued to unfold. As hard as it is to believe, the parallels didn't stop there. When it came to releasing violent music, King Von had set the blueprint. He dissed dead enemies whenever he got the chance. After FBG Duck was shot and killed on August 4th, 2021, Von wasted no time. Just a month later, he released the track GTA, where he openly dissed Duck. On the song, Von rapped lines mocking Duck's death, turning a real murder into lyrics. That killing wasn't random. FBG Duck had been targeted after dissing T-Roy, King Von's close friend, on the song Exposing Me remix. In that track, Duck rapped about T-Roy's death, referencing how he was shot in the head and didn't survive. The lyrics crossed a line that Chicago street culture never forgets. FBG Duck's murder was later captured on CCTV, and the footage was brutal. Surveillance video showed a black car pulling up in front of a store. Armed men jumped out almost immediately and began firing. Duck tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Within seconds, the shooters got back into the black vehicle, along with a gray Chrysler that had also been involved, and both cars sped off. Duck was left bleeding on the sidewalk, dying in broad daylight. Those images, those lyrics, and those patterns are why the comparison between King Von and Lil Jeff never stopped. Different names, different eras, but the same cycle. Violence glorified, retaliation normalized, and consequences that kept spreading long after the original targets were gone. More footage later surfaced showing the gray Chrysler fleeing the scene and pulling toward O-Block with a police car in pursuit. That detail only added to the mythology surrounding King Von and the violence tied to his name. Even after FBG Duck's death, Von continued to mock Duck's family. He openly dissed Duck's brother FBG Brick, who had also been shot and killed in Chicago. On the track Pressing, Von rapped lines that referenced Brick's death directly, turning another real killing into music meant to intimidate and provoke. FBG Brick had been killed years earlier, on July 17, 2017, that afternoon. Brick, his cousin, Kobe Mack, and others were in the Woodlawn neighborhood when a car pulled up looking for FBG Duck. When they couldn't find him, the vehicle left. Around 2:50 p.m., shots rang out. Police responded to the 6300 block of South St. Lawrence Avenue and found a scene that immediately made headlines. Kobe Mack was lying in front of a home with a gunshot wound to the head. FBG Brick was discovered in a nearby gangway, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds to his back and arms. Both men would die from their injuries. Lil Jeff followed a disturbingly similar pattern. He detailed the deaths of his own enemies in his music with the same unapologetic tone. In one of his tracks, Lil Jeff rapped lines describing the moment his opponents were hit, emphasizing bloodshed, weapons, and the chaos that followed. Those lyrics weren't abstract. They were tied to a real incident that left 2 young men dead. That incident happened on Friday, January 26, 2024, at approximately 12:30 p.m. 2 vehicles sped toward the Washington train station, just a short distance from Innovations High School in downtown Chicago. When the cars stopped, masked gunmen jumped out with weapons already raised. There was no confusion about who they were there for. Monty and Lil Rob were the targets. Shooters opened fire immediately and didn't miss. Within seconds, both victims were down. The gunmen jumped back into their vehicles and fled, leaving Monty and Lil Rob bleeding on the ground. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, but the situation was already beyond saving. Both teens were transported to Northwestern Memorial Hospital, where they were pronounced dead shortly after arrival. Above the street, a witness standing on the train platform captured the aftermath on camera. The video showed the final moments after the shooting, graphic and raw. It spread quickly online, going viral as viewers watched 2 young lives fade away. In the footage, one of the victims can be heard letting out agonized sounds as he lay dying. Lil Jeff later used that sound as the title of one of his tracks. He didn't stop there. He went on to mock their deaths repeatedly on social media, revisiting the moment whenever he got the chance. But the similarities between King Von and Lil Jeff didn't end with music or public taunting. Both men were also rumored to have been involved in the deaths of female gang members. For King Von, that name was K.I. for Lil Jeff. It was a 25-year-old woman known as D-Money. That shooting happened in the early hours of November 1st, 2023. Lil Deuce and D-Money were sitting inside a parked vehicle on the 8300 block of South Dorchester Avenue. It was an ordinary night by Chicago standards, quiet on the surface, till it suddenly wasn't. According to an eyewitness, 2 individuals crept up on the car without being noticed. Before the victims could react, gunfire erupted. The attack was fast and deliberate. A barrage of bullets tore through the vehicle as the shooters fled on foot, disappearing into the darkness. Lil Deuce was struck multiple times, taking several shots to the chest. Paramedics rushed him to the University of Chicago Medical Center, but he was pronounced dead on arrival. D-Money had been hit in the torso. She was transported to the same hospital, fighting for her life, but she succumbed to her injuries soon after. Once again, the parallels were impossible to ignore. Different names, different cases, but the same pattern repeating itself. Violence carried out, immortalized in music, and echoed long after the victims were gone. Lil Jeff became everyone's prime suspect, and his addiction to internet attention only made things worse. He couldn't resist feeding the speculation. Not long after news of the shootings broke, he took to social media and posted a series of cryptic messages that many interpreted as a public confession. The post included hat emojis, symbols commonly used in street culture to represent a body count. What caught people's attention immediately was that one of the hats appeared different. It resembled a woman's hat. Too many watching closely, it looked like a reference to D-Money. D-Money was known in the streets. According to widespread online rumors, she was deeply involved and had a reputation as a fierce shooter for her gang. Images circulated of her posing alongside FBG Wooski, one of the most well-known figures in Chicago drill culture and, at one point, considered one of King Von's most significant rivals. That connection only deepened the speculation. Years earlier, King Von was believed to have killed one of Wooski's closest friends. Akira Barnes, better known in the streets as Keika, was only 17 years old. She had already built a reputation that made her name ring loudly across Chicago. She was widely viewed as a female assassin, allegedly tied to multiple killings. That reputation, however, offered no protection. On April 11, 2014, she was walking with her brother and a friend on the 6400 block of South Eberhart Avenue when everything changed. A hooded gunman stepped out from the shadows, raised a handgun, and opened fire without warning. K.I. was hit 9 times. Bullets tore through her mouth, neck, and chest. She tried to run, desperate to escape, but her body failed her. She collapsed on a nearby doorstep as her life drained away. Paramedics rushed her to Northwestern Memorial Hospital, but the wounds were too severe. She was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. Her brother and the friend she was with were also shot, but it was clear from the scene that Akira Barnes had been the primary target. For years, the question lingered. Who killed K.I.? Police initially suspected King Von. He was arrested after eyewitnesses identified him as the shooter. But the case fell apart due to insufficient evidence. No charges stuck, and Von walked free. When he was later killed in Atlanta in 2020, many assumed the truth would never come out. Eventually it did. Official reports later confirmed what many had long believed. King Von had been the shooter. The police documentation laid out the details with chilling clarity. The gunman was described as wearing a gray hoodie and blue jeans. He approached the group calmly, pulled out a handgun, and unleashed a barrage of bullets, striking all 3 victims. Then, just as quickly, he fled the scene in a waiting vehicle and disappeared. What made the comparison between Von and Lil Jeff even more unsettling was what happened after Jeff's own death. Investigators continued working the cases tied to Monty and Lil Rob, and new information surfaced. Police were able to piece together evidence using social media posts, phone records, stolen vehicle reports, and hours of surveillance footage. That work led them to identify 3 shooters involved in the killings. One of those shooters was Lil Jeff. That revelation changed everything. It meant that had he lived, Lil Jeff could have been arrested and charged alongside 22-year-old Tommy Coleman. Coleman is now facing 2 counts of first-degree murder, attempted murder, aggravated discharge of a firearm toward an occupied vehicle, being a felon in possession of a firearm, and failure to register as a gun offender. Lil Jeff died before he could ever stand in that courtroom, but the evidence suggests the system was closing in on him all the same. Another striking similarity between Lil Jeff and King Von was the way their stories ended. We've already seen how Lil Jeff was gunned down while actively sliding on his enemies. What many people forget is that King Von met his fate under almost identical circumstances. On November 6, 2020, Von was on a similar mission when he was shot and killed in Atlanta. That night, King Von had just left Opium nightclub after celebrating the release of his first album, Welcome to a Block. The energy was high, confidence was even higher, and the night wasn't supposed to be over yet. From Opium, Von and his crew headed toward the Monaco Hookah Lounge. What he didn't know was that his rivals, Quando Rondo and Lil Tim, were also in the area. As Von was about to step out of his vehicle and head toward the club, one of his homeboys told him he had just spotted Quando Rondo in the parking lot. That information changed everything. Von reacted instantly. In a split second, he was out of the car and moving toward Quando's direction without hesitation. Quando was in the process of walking toward the club when Von reached him, then attacked first, rushing him and knocking him to the ground. Members of Von's crew followed behind, joining in as Quando tried desperately to escape. It was chaotic, fast, and uncontrolled. What started as a confrontation quickly turned violent. Then everything escalated. Lil Tim suddenly appeared from behind a nearby vehicle holding a firearm and opened fire. Panic erupted. People scattered in every direction. In the middle of the chaos, King Von was struck in the torso. Almost immediately after, 2 off-duty police officers who were nearby responded to the gunfire and shot Lil Tim. As the scene cleared, Von's crew rushed to his side. They lifted him into a vehicle and sped toward the nearest hospital, hoping they could still save him. Lil Tim, wounded but alive, limped into a separate vehicle with Quando Rondo, and they also headed to the hospital. In a twist that felt almost symbolic, both groups arrived at the same hospital. Despite the tension, no further violence broke out. Security and police presence kept the situation contained. But the damage had already been done. King Von was rushed into surgery, and despite medical efforts, he passed away on the operating table. The parallels between King Von and Lil Jeff are impossible to ignore. The same reckless confidence, the same obsession with street reputation, Same pattern of violence, music, and online taunting, and ultimately the same ending. For men like them, there were only ever two destinations waiting at the end of the road: a jail cell or a coffin. As FBG Buddha once put it, King Vons don't last long in the streets. Stories like this don't end cleanly. They ripple outward, taking more lives, destroying families, and leaving questions that never fully get answered. And if you've been following this breakdown from start to finish, you already understand that none of this happened by accident. Every step led to the next. If you want to stay locked in as Hoodlakes continues uncovering the patterns most people overlook, make sure you're subscribed. These stories don't stop just because one chapter ends.